Hello and welcome to this episode of our program Daily Debate. And there's no important than the parliamentary elections taking place in Egypt, or just the first stage of which has ended yesterday, that is taking the center attention of everyone, not just in Egypt but all over the world. And the Higher Election Committee, or the HEC, has announced or said it will announce the results of the first phase of the parliamentary elections on Wednesday after finalizing the vote counts. On Tuesday, the committee announced at a press conference that 30,531 expats had cast their ballots at 139 polling stations in Egyptian embassies and consulates abroad during the first phase of the elections, which took place on the 17th and 18th of October. Councillor Ayman Abbas said the invalid votes had reached 1,856, while the correct ones had reached 28,675. The runoff of the first phase will be held on the 26th and 27th of October for expats, and 27th and 28th of October inside Egypt. Now, 44 political parties contested in the first stage of Egypt's parliamentary elections. Out of the 44 parties, 13 participated as members of electoral coalitions competing for party-based seats, and 31 fielded candidates as independents. The first stage saw 8 electoral coalitions with 240 candidates competing for 60 seats reserved to party-based candidates in 2 constituencies, the Nile West Delta with 15 seats and the North, Middle and South Upper Egypt with 45 seats. It also saw around 2,573 vie for 226 seats allocated to independents. Egypt has stressed that it is committed to transparency, reiterating that the election will be observed by dozens of local and several international groups, and that has already happened. The Higher Electoral Commission had announced its approval for 87 organizations to observe the race, with 6 international organizations including Arab League, the African Union and the European Union. And it has granted permits to over 17,000 local observers and over 700 international ones. While the HEC has announced that 44 press and media institutions, as well as 13 news websites, would be allowed to cover the elections, and that 768 foreign media correspondents had registered to cover the polls across Egypt. There are also 61 embassies in Egypt observing the election race. The embassies had made the request to observe upon the invitation of the Egyptian government. Observation mission have the authority to gather information and make a judgment based on the accurate information they gather. Locally, the National Council for Human Rights set up several operation rooms across different provinces to observe the voting. The number of organizations involved in monitoring the upcoming election, or these elections rather, is the same as those observing the presidential election of 2014, 79 local and 6 international organizations. Exactly, this is what we are going to discuss today. We are going to discuss the Egyptian parliamentary elections, but this time from the eyes of the international observers who have overseen by themselves the voting process with all the details ahead and during. Before we proceed with our discussion, let me first, I have one comment. Since I had the honor to cover these elections, I have to say that those who went to cast their voices this time went for one reason, just because they sensed that it was their rights and their duty at the same time. They wanted to share in shaping up the future of their own country. The turnout is discussable, but that's not the issue of our discussion today. Let's first have a headline of the day, which is Egypt's central bank to hold Egyptian pound steady. And the Central Bank of Egypt will hold the Egyptian pound steady at 7.93 pounds per dollar at its dollar sale that occurred today, after letting it weaken at the previous two sessions. Egypt, which is facing a currency crisis due to what many economists consider to be an overvalued pound, had allowed the pound to weaken to 7.83 per dollar from 7.73 Thursday, then further to 7.93 on Sunday. The Egyptian Central Bank sold $37.5 million at a cut-off price of 7.93 per dollar at its dollar sale on Sunday. And one trader said that the pound weakened further on the parallel market, with the dollar changing hands at 8.4 pounds, while another put it at 8.42 pounds to the dollar, weakened than Thursday's rate of 8.25. I guess to highlight to spotlight the issue more, we have over the phone Mr. Tariq Hilmi, banker. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening to you.
Yes, and the devaluation of the Egyptian pound, once again, the Egyptian pound is weakened to 7.93. Why?
Why? Because it's scarce. I mean, dollar is like any other commodity, especially in Egypt. When we have scarcity in any commodity and the demand is increasing, of course the price will increase. We have also to consider that during the last 3 years we are losing huge sources of dollars, whether it's coming from the Egyptian remittances from abroad, tourism, and even exports. Exports are also decreasing due to a number of reasons. I mean, this is not the subject to discuss right now. So what we are doing, that we have scarcity in dollars, while our import bill is increasing year after year until it reached almost $80 billion this year. While our export will not exceed maximum $35 to $40 billion. So we have a deficit in our commercial balance, balance of trade by almost $40 billion. From where we are going to get this deficit? I mean, first we have to reactivate our sources again, whether from the Egyptian remittances or by increasing tourism or by increasing exports. It takes time.
Yes, so, but let me just for people to understand what is going on. Now, economists or some of the traders are saying that Egypt is facing a currency crisis due to what they call or consider an overvalued pound. Now, for the very ordinary citizens, what does this mean, sir?
Overvalued pound, that the pound should be devaluated again to the dollar to reach 9 or 10 pounds, which they consider this is the realistic rate or the realistic exchange rate between the dollar and the Egyptian pound. Who decides on that? They decide, or we decide, or the central bank. The central bank. I mean, no one else can decide that this is the actual rate of the dollar against the Egyptian pound, or vice versa. They decide that the Egyptian pound is overvalued towards the dollar. On what basis? I mean, they should tell us what's the real basics, or what's exactly they depend on when they say that that the Egyptian pound is overvalued. No one can say that without really having strong reasons for saying that. The only organization or the only person who can say so is the governor of the central bank or the central bank itself. I mean, which is represented, of course, by the governor.
Yes.
So, I mean, saying words haphazardly like this or statement haphazardly like this, it won't really be useful for anyone in Egypt.
Yes.
So I think we should all wait, have patience, and because we are we are in a crisis. I mean, no one is saying otherwise. We have a crisis, and we have to wait for 1 or 2 or 3 years even. To start reactivating our U.S. dollar resources from different activities, like I've said before, and then we can say what we can do. But,
yes, but if I may ask you again,
sure,
like,
sure.
Yes, allowing the currency to weaken in a controlled way as done by the Central Bank of Egypt could, yes, boost Egypt's exports and attract further investments, but also it increases the gap.
The import bill?
Or the bill,
import bill, yes, yes.
Of imports. And,
yes,
and
yes.
we all know that our imports are very essential, and if we're not speaking about commodities, we're speaking about fuel, we're speaking about food supplies. And so how do you view the situation here?
You know how much is the fuel bill increased after the 25th of Jan revolution? I mean, now we have reached almost, last year we have reached almost $2.2 billion a month for importing whether diesel or fuel or solar or whatever. While before the revolution we were only, importing by $100 million or something like that. Of course, now it decreased because of the oil prices had reduced to $40 a barrel or so on. But we have never seen before the revolution that the fuel import bill to reach that $1 billion. Okay, considering also other things that we have also started to import from abroad, which increased, like I've said, the deficit in our balance of trade to $40 billion. People will say that we have unnecessary commodities or unnecessary goods that we are importing from abroad, whether for some fruits, some vegetables, some, and so on. This will not really affect the trade balance, and so we cannot devaluate the Egyptian pound because this will increase the price of the most important commodities to the Egyptian people, whether wheat, whether fuel, whether etc., a lot of other things. So we have to, when we decide to do something, we have to look both sides. What will do to the import bill and what will do to the export bill. Exporters should start to look really more into their procedures, into their commodities, into their whatever, to start to increase their exports. I mean, they cannot always say that the dollar and the Egyptian pound are the problem in reducing our exports. No, it's not. It's a matter of quality. It's a matter of timing of exporting to the importers abroad. It's a matter of a lot of things. So we cannot really say that this is the only problem we have in exports. No, we have another problems.
Yes.
So please keep the exchange rate of the dollars against the Egyptian pounds in the hands of the people who really understand what exactly we can do regarding this issue.
But we are doing that. It's just that we are making clear for people why this is being done, and the people had the right to understand and to. Yes.
I'm not saying otherwise.
Yes.
But some issues need technical people. We cannot really
definitely,
describe,
and this is why we called you, sir, to understand from you.
Exactly. We cannot really describe everything to the ordinary people because, I mean, some things are so sophisticated that we are trying, of course, to facilitate and to let people understand. But exchange rate, it's a very sophisticated issue. Like I've told you before, it affects our import bill. It affects our prices, especially that we have an import bill of $80 billion. Most of it constitute of commodities like wheat, like fuel, and so on. So, I mean, devaluating the Egyptian pound will increase the prices. Yes. Let me tell you other things. I mean, most of the commodities prices abroad has decreased, but in Egypt, nothing is really coming down. It comes down abroad, but it doesn't come down in Egypt. While vice versa, whenever it rise up in other states or abroad, of course it throws up in Egypt, but it will never come down when it can come down in other countries.
One more thing, sir. We all know that, of course, Egypt, or part of the reason that Egypt is or has been trying to tame the thriving currency black market. And it has been doing or devaluating the dollar one of the reasons was because of that. So from your point of view, was that measure carried out by the Central Bank of Egypt able to control the black market? And another final question here, did this by any means affect the parliamentary elections?
No, it will not. And let's not open the subject of parliamentary election, because this is something really which is. But let's speak economics. So
then let's keep it economy and
yes, okay. So the central bank, if you remember, of course, I don't know if you have were in a position to understand in the 90s what happened to the dollars against the Egyptian pound. What happened in the 90s that we were having a huge foreign currency reserve. It almost reached $40 billion coming from different sources. So we were able at the time to fight the black market, or what we call it the parallel market of the dollar. In the polite word of the black market, it's a parallel market. So we were able, because the central bank were acting as a buyer or seller to try to protect the Egyptian pound or even the dollar exchange rate. Now we don't have this luxury of a huge foreign reserve. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to apply some measures to cap somehow the parallel market of the US dollars against the Egyptian pound. Of course, this will not really stop the parallel market or the black market, but we will try to cap it as much as we can.
Right.
By following also other procedures.
Yes.
Like, the maximum deposit per month should not exceed $50,000 in any account. It takes time. We have to be patient.
We'll try to be as patient as possible, Mr. Tariq Helmi. Banker, we thank you very much for being with us over the phone. And back to our discussion in the Egyptian parliamentary elections from the eyes of the international observers. Before we proceed with our discussion, the Higher Election Committee is to announce the results of the first phase of the parliamentary elections on Wednesday. Let's watch the report and we'll come back for discussion.
The High Elections Committee, the HEC, announced in a press conference that the official results of the parliamentary poll's first stage is expected to be announced tomorrow. The vote counting in the two-day first stage of parliamentary elections started on Monday after the polling stations closed at the 14 concerned provinces, as aired on the Egyptian state television. In a press conference following the closure of the ballots, the spokesman of the High Election Committee, Omar Marwan, said the committee has not announced any turnout rates so far. Some 27 million Egyptians are eligible to vote in the first stage, cover 14 provinces out of the country's 27. The second and final stage for the other 13 provinces will be held on November the 22nd and 23rd. The turnout is expected to be much lower than the previous 2011-2012 parliamentary elections held after the ouster of former long-time leader Hosni Mubarak, where the turnout rate exceeded 54%. The first stage of the polls includes 2,548 individuals and 7 lists contesting for 286 seats, representing more than 50% of those of the coming parliament. The voting process took place in 5,460 polling stations amid tightened security, with some 16,000 judges supervising the polls and 185,000 security personnel and policemen securing them. The two-day elections that conclude on Monday mark the third and final phase of the country's future roadmap to democracy, declared by the army chief and now President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi on the removal of former President Mohamed Morsi in July 2013 in response to mass protests. Meanwhile, the Foreign Ministry took another swipe at foreign media outlets over its coverage of the ongoing elections, saying it reflects another failed attempt to tarnish the country's image. A statement by Foreign Minister spokesman Ahmed Abu Zaid said the attempts to jump to conclusions regarding the results and significance of the elections before the end of the first day of the first electoral phase in order to meet publication deadlines indicates these reports' inaccuracy. Abu Zaid added that such reports are implying that the opposition is absent because the terrorist brotherhood is not participating. He also added that media outlets have consistently disregarded all positive developments in Egypt, such as the new Suez Canal project and recent Egyptian achievements, including its election to a non-permanent seat at the UN Security Council. Spokesman also labeled as misguided and misinformed the attempts to link this year's poll to the popular support for Egypt's leadership. He said that anyone with a basic knowledge of Egypt's political landscape should know that this year's parliamentary elections are subject to many complex factors, citing the development of parties, voters' awareness, electoral fatigue, and the absence of polarization. At the end of the second day of the elections, initial estimates suggested a turnout of around 25%, which is far less than the 54% turnout registered in 2011-2012 parliamentary elections. The low turnout that dominated the general scene in the first stage of the polls is attributed to the dissatisfaction of some youth and the previous recurrent delays of the vital event. Parliamentary elections mark the third and final stage of the country's future roadmap to democracy declared by the army in 2013.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, a year of challenges and achievements. Regaining Egypt's leading role regionally and internationally. New mega development projects. Upgrading Egypt's infrastructure. New Egypt, forward ever.
Welcome back into our discussion. Let me first welcome our guest, Mr. Alaa Abu Dakka, the Vice or the Deputy Head of the Global Network for Rights and Development and one of the international observer networks that was observing the Egyptian parliamentary elections. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
Thank you. And sir, you have been observing the whole process. Then we want to know your assessment to how the whole process went.
Well, we are here, if you let me introduce our mission.
Please do.
We are the joint mission of international observers here in Brussels, in Egypt. We came from different organizations. We have the Global Network for Rights and Development heading this mission, and also the International Institute for Peace, Justice and Human Rights from Geneva, and the COMESA, the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa. And finally, we have our local partner, Ma'at for Peace, Justice, and Ma'at Institution for Peace and Justice. We are 300 international observers here, and we have 2,000 local observers that helping us also with logistics, translation, and so on. The whole process, coming back to your question, we arrived in, we have the big group of international observers arrived just prior to the election. However, our local partners, they started work from February 2015 prior to the election. So far, we reported that the election process went smoothly and calm and also in peaceful manner. And we think things were well organized inside the polling centers, polling stations. and we have some observations. However, we think things were working very well so far.
We want to ask you about facilities that, of course, you went to the polling station and observed the situation there.
Yes.
So we want to know from you, how did you find the facilities that were submitted by the authorities, the security situation, where the security to interfere in a way or another in the voters' intentions or desires, or how did you view the whole situation? How did you observe the whole situation with your eyes?
Yes. For myself, I can speak on my behalf, not the whole mission, because we are still in the process of conducting all the reports from the field.
Yeah.
But I've been into Al-Giza governorates. We went to districts like Tfeh, Asaf, far away in really rural areas. The security was, I think the security was doing their jobs. They were, the places, the polling centers that we observed were well secured. There was not that much of interference, and the places sometimes inside the polling stations we did not see security forces personnel. However, we think the security forces need to know more about the electoral process, and that there should be some coordination between the High Election Committee and the security forces about the roles, what they are supposed to do during the election days.
What do you mean?
I mean, sometimes observers face some difficulties to enter the polling stations. They enter the police,
polling stations or the constituencies or the areas of the voting process.
Yes, particularly the.
Do they
polling
have
centers.
the permits?
Yes. However, some security forces needed to check again with their supervisors.
Governments have begun negotiating
they
on
meant very well. However, I think that was like a small obstruction of our work, because some of us spent like 15 to 20 minutes waiting for this permission to enter the polling station. Some
Governments
others,
have begun
in our
negotiating
group
on an
reported
updated
as well
draft
that,
of a
they
global
were not
climate
allowed
change
to
deal
enter
that
the
was released
station.
on Tuesday.
And,
The latest
that's-
round of UN
But
talks
do
in
you
Bonn
know,
amid
Sir,
relief that new
sometimes
additions had not
inside
seen the
polling
text
station,
balloon.
security
Developing
forces
countries
has
voiced
no
anger at the
role to
beginning of
play,
the talks
and
on Monday that a
according to the
slimmed-down
judges
20-page version of the text
whether or
created
not
by the
you can
chairs of the
enter or not.
negotiations
Yes,
had not
we are
included
well
key
aware of that.
proposals on
However,
issues
I
like
think the
helping
security
people deal with
forces
the impacts of
did
climate
not
change
understand that
and
point very well.
financing their
That's why,
protection.
therefore,
In response, all
we see
countries were
that there is,
permitted to insert
it's
must-have
crucial
items.
for the next
The resulting
phases
new
or
text
the
is
upcoming
34 pages
elections
long
that
and
the
was
security
described by
forces
climate
be
experts
well
as
trained
manageable.
to be more
The deal is due to be finalized by more than
impartial, neutral,
190
and
nations at a UN
non-intimidating
conference
for
in Paris
voters and also
starting on
for
November
international
30th.
and local
French
observers.
Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius
No,
told
that's a
negotiators
point I
that there was a
really
need
want to
for
understand
confidence,
more.
transparency and a sense of
Intimidating to
urgency at the
voters?
talks this week to ensure
Intimidating,
success.
not
Paris.
intimidating.
He said he hoped that the discussions
What I
would settle
mean
some
is,
important issues and
the security
identify some
forces
key
were
political
trying to do
questions
their
that
jobs.
remained
Exactly.
open.
And
Peter
but
Betts,
that
lead negotiator for the
might
EU,
come
said
up-
the new
come
draft
up
text was a
as
useful
there
tool,
are
but there was a long way to go
putting
before countries
people
could
in
agree on which
order,
elements
and
should be
people
part of the
sometimes
deal
get
and how to
easily
fit them
intimidated
together.
by that.
Seven
That was
smaller groups have been
noticed.
discussing
You mean
different
that they
sections
have
of the
to
draft
be
agreement
calmer with
covering
people,
emissions,
but
reductions,
the
climate
area
finance,
you've
and
been
adapting
to
to extreme
is
weather
a
and
very
rising seas,
extremely
amongst other
tensed
issues.
area.
I
And
understand.
if these were all your observation, then we are
Oil
quite
prices
happy
fell
with
Tuesday,
that.
but not as
Yes,
sharply as
yes.
a day
I
earlier
think,
as markets looked
the
ahead to
security
more
forces
indications of
in-
world
You're
crude
speaking
demand
about
levels
Atfih?
amid high supplies.
yes.
And you're
Brent
speaking
North
about
Sea crude
Saf?
for delivery in
Yes,
December
yes.
And you're
slipped
speaking
19
about
cents to stand
very
at $48.42 a barrel in late London
areas.
deals. U.S.
So that's
benchmark
okay.
West Texas
I'm taking
Intermediate
your
for November
observation
delivery
into
dropped
consideration, of
34
course.
cents
Yes.
to
Of course.
$45.55 a barrel compared with Monday's
Observation
close.
missions have
Both
the
contracts fell
authority, of
sharply
course,
on
to
Monday
collect
following the release of
information
official data showing that
and
China's
to make
economy grew at its
judgments
weakest pace
based on
in more than
the, of
6
course,
years,
accurate information.
renewing concerns
And
over
we're saying
demand at the world's
accurate
top
information
energy
because
consumer.
we depend on that.
Prices were weighed down also by news that
How
Saudi
did you
Arabia's
find your
crude oil
access
stockpiles
to
stood
the
at record
information you
highs,
want?
adding to concerns about high U.S.
Most of the
inventories
polling
and
stations
expectations
that
of
we,
increased Iranian output
No, even
with the
ahead
lifting
of the
Western
voting
sanctions
process
on Iran.
itself.
Yes, most of them, they were very helpful, and they were trying to give us
China's
all the
economy
information
decelerated
that
in the
we need.
latest quarter, but stronger spending
That
by
was most
consumers
of the
were
cases
emerging
that
as
we
an
had.
important pillar of growth,
in
helped to
some
avert a
cases, the
deeper
judge,
downturn. The
or
world's second largest
or the
economy
head
grew by
of the
6.9% in the 3 months ended
polling
in
station
September,
was a
the
little bit
slowest since early
intimidated by our
2009 in
presence,
the
especially
aftermath of the global
that he
financial
has
crisis.
already
That was
crowded,
down from the previous quarter 7%.
crowded,
China's economic prospects are being scrutinized
the
around
place
the world.
was crowded by
Its slowdown
people
has
like
unnerved global
candidate
financial markets and held down growth in
observers
countries
and
such as
media, other
Brazil
media.
and
But I
Australia that
think
export raw materials
mostly
to
they were
China.
very helpful.
Last
They
month,
tried
the Federal
to
Reserve mentioned
give us
China's
all the
slowdown and
information
deteriorating
that we
global
needed.
economic conditions when it delayed the long-anticipated
Why in the
increase in
voting
short-term
process
American
itself?
interest rates.
What were your observation to might be irregularities, violations, maybe frauds? What was your observation to that?
No, we did not observe any irregularity that we could call as fraud. I think everything was going in a good direction and in a smooth way. There was some minor violations or irregulations, such as campaign materials. We noticed heavily the presence of campaign materials still around the polling centers, and that was one of the observations. Mostly all our teams came back to. Also, I think the badges, for us as international observers, we depend on the badge to know who is doing what. And mostly the people inside the polling stations, they didn't have the badges. However, we knew that the head of the polling station know exactly who is doing what. But maybe in the future it will be more easy and for everyone to be transparent with a badge for those who are inside the polling station. The last observation was also about the gender balance in these polling stations. We noted that most of the heads of these polling stations were men, and we recommend that the gender balance issue would be addressed by the High Electoral Commission.
Of those people inside the polling station?
Inside the polling station, particularly the head of the polling station. So as our organization as well take care of the gender balance and promote the empowerment of women, this was also very important for
Definitely.
us as a note.
But I suppose you should have come to Giza, to other Giza governor. You've been set to the most tensed areas with village culture, with a special, very conservative culture. And of course, this culture is still prevailing. So I wish if you've come to other ones here in the cities. But yes, it's of course another issue to be put in mind. And yes, another point is the interference. Did you find any kind of interference by any means, by any of those in authority to pressure voters in their choices, or to put an influence or anything of that sort?
No, we have not noticed any kind of interference. We have reported that some complaints by voters or candidate agents against each other, but we haven't seen these kind of interference by ourselves, or our teams did not report any of these things happening in front of them. No.
I need to ask you about the environment of the whole process, ahead and during. How did you find the environment surrounding the elections process? From your point of view as an observer, as an international observer who will be reporting to the outside world?
Yes, I think the general feeling here that we are observing an election with a low turnout, however, very peaceful, very calm. The people are very friendly to us, and the judges, the polling station staff have been very helpful to our mission. And finally, we have some recommendations that we will come up with after the election for the Egyptian people and for the election authorities, and also for the international community as well.
We will be there to hear those recommendations, of course.
Thank you.
Yes?
Yes, of course.
Right. Before we continue on with our discussion, let me first have this report. And Egyptians go to vote for the parliamentary elections. Let's watch the report and we'll come back for discussion.
Egyptians headed to polling stations in the first stage of the parliamentary elections to choose a new lower house of parliament in the third and final stage of the country's roadmap to democracy, the first being the adoption of a new constitution, and the second, the 2014 election of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The elections are being held over 2 phases, ending on the 2nd of December. The first stage included 18 governorates, which results are not expected until the first week of December. At least 185,000 troops and security personnel have been deployed across Egypt to secure the election's whole process. More than 55 million Egyptians are eligible to elect 448 candidates for individual seats and 120 full lists. Around 5,420 candidates are running for the parliamentary seat in the 2-phase polls. President al-Sisi called on Egyptians to participate in their thousands and in the first phase of the polls, and urged voters to select those candidates who they believe will be able to build various challenges across the country. President stressed that the free and solid will of the citizens is the only way to eliminate terrorism and fight those who wanted to hijack the nation under false slogans. The armed forces implemented measures to secure poll stations, including putting more than 185,000 officers and soldiers on high alert. The Minister of Interior announced the state of high alert as forces and explosives experts were deployed at all polling stations. According to the voting process, nearly 16,000 judges supervised the process, whilst other 87 international and local non-governmental organizations got licenses for observation. The new parliament will comprise 568 elected members, 448 elected on an individual basis, and 120 through winner-takes-all lists in 4 districts with quotas for women, Christians and youth. The president may also appoint a further 5%. Runoffs will take place in districts where no clear winner has emerged. Parliamentary elections are supposed to move Egypt closer to democracy, whilst the next parliament will be the first elected after the adoption last year of a new constitution, arguably the most liberal Egypt has ever had.
Yes, and back to you, Mr. Dakka, and this is your first time to observe elections in Egypt?
Yes, this was my first time. I'm very honored to be here and to see this whole process, and especially that it is the third rock bed in Egypt's society moving towards democracy.
Yes, very much indeed it is, and it is supposed to be shaping our future for the next stage, yes. Have you been observing other elections in other countries?
Yes, I have been in, particularly in Arab countries. I've been in Tunisia for the presidential and parliamentary election in Tunisia, and also the Algerian presidential election in 2014.
So, can we know the difference between your observation to the elections in Egypt and those you observed?
Well, I would say that every election has its own frame of work, and the situation in Egypt is very different than any other countries. So we, as international observers, take that in our consideration, and the election is very different, and the atmosphere, the political atmosphere, the social and economical situations are always different from a country to another. So we do not assess elections based on other elections as well.
Yes, but only how different? How different? I mean, you were in an Arab country, a very neighboring Arab country you're speaking about.
Yeah.
So how different is the Egyptian parliamentary elections in Egypt than that in Tunisia, for an instance?
Well, it is different on the context of the perception of the people regarding parliamentary election here in Egypt, for example, to those in Algeria or in Tunis or Tunisia. I do not think that there is a way to compare one election to another, because we always have different methodology on working on these elections.
Yes, I mean here, did you study the atmosphere? For an instance, we know that, for an instance, that Tunisians have a much higher level of education, or I mean here that the percentage of those who are educated are huge or bigger than the Egyptian one. So how did that reflect on your assessment?
For sure, when we were in Tunisia, it helped a lot that there was good voter education taking place in Tunisia. And yes, there is a gap between the education system in Egypt regarding comparing with other countries. Maybe it's not always the same when it comes to education, and the curriculum is very different from a country to another. I would say it is about how people saw the election here. It was not very clear for them from candidates and the candidates' program, or why they should vote to this one or another. And that was not, for example, an issue in countries that we visited before. So I think this is also has something to do with the low turnouts that we've seen here, especially also the apathy of young people to go and vote. There was no clear program for candidates, and they were not trying to...
Let me take this from other perspective. Did you get in contact with voters and with candidates as well?
Yes.
Yes, please.
One of our... we observe not only election days, we observe also all what is happening prior election days, and we visit candidates, party groups.
Without mentioning their names, but
yes.
Just, yes.
Yes, and also we make interviews with the voters during election or before election as well. And the voters didn't seem to understand very much the process or the importance of the parliamentary election. That was one of our observations, because they were not told what does this candidate or this representative would mean to them if he was voted and elected as a parliamentarian. I think voters in general had some understanding, but not the full picture of the rules of the parliament, the Egyptian parliament, and how the constitution can be translated into laws by those candidates that they are trying to win this election.
And what about the candidates you got in contact with? Did you transfer to them what you already been told by voters? Did you transmit those fears and those ill of information, lack of information they have about the candidates, about the whole process, about the importance of the parliament? Did you transmit all this?
Well, I have to say that we as international observers, our role is not to interfere in the process.
Yes,
we
I
mostly assess, report, and eventually take our recommendations after the election to all those parties who are related to the election. So we will do our report and submit it to everyone who was in this election, all the relevant groups, including candidates, after the election. Otherwise, we will be, we will not respect our code of conduct that we have here.
Definitely, definitely, and yes, ethically, that's very much right. Now, another issue that we want to know from you: how did you view the role played by the media? And we're not speaking about the state media only, but we're speaking about the private and the state media.
Well. Our joint mission recognizes the importance of the important role of media, and we think they play a great role in educating voters about the rights and about the democracy, like the functioning of democracy here. However, we noted the absence of media during this election period. We think
the
that
absence
the role
of media, where you mean in the polling station,
yes,
or you mean
during election days in polling stations, wherever.
I was there.
Of course, we haven't visited all the election, all the polling centers. However, we think the presence of media was low. We believe that the media plays a great role in informing the public and forming the public's perspective about any election. And
How do you differentiate between the role played by both private media and the state media? And of course, you have been watching both to understand what is going on and how are the matters going on in Egypt, who is influencing who and what is going on.
Yes. Well, we have noticed that the private media here is trying to more like support those candidates or that, and that is something we understand because they are relying on revenue and they have specific or special viewers. Also, we note that the media was not really clear on their message to the people why they should vote. Not all the time given platforms for candidates, for example, to tell more about their program of work and why people should elect them. And finally, I think there is a problem of impartiality sometimes and neutrality in the media coverage here in Egypt. I think we urge the media to have a bigger role in the election process and a bigger role in educating the Egyptian people about the importance of democracy in Egypt.
If I may end our conversation here with, I would ask you, sir, to give me an overall message, because you know that the rerun will be in just the upcoming and there is the second stage. So if we may ask you about the recommendations, of course we'll not be speaking about this first stage because obviously there is no time for anything to do in very short times. But we are asking you so that candidates would be aware in the next stage what to do. The media should know what to do. People would understand really what is the whole situation here.
Yes. Well, in general, this is a very crucial moment for the Egyptian people, and there should be more awareness campaign towards the importance of the parliament, the Egyptian legislative parliament, and its role. We believe as international observers that the constitution that was agreed on in 2014 was a very big step towards democratizing Egypt. However, this will be translated in laws by those who are being elected right now, and the Egyptian people should come out and vote for the people who are who they want to shape the future for them here through the legal process. I think also the civil society should play a bigger role on this issue. And finally, I'd like to say thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much for being very generous.
No, thank you for coming to Egypt and observing our own elections, and looking forward to more transparency and more of your objective and important notes. Mr. Alaa Abu Dakka, the Deputy Director of the Global Network for Rights and Development, we thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Before I go, just let me say that the Parliament is very crucial. The Parliament will approve the policies, the economic and social plans, developmental plans of the country. This particular Parliament is very crucial for Egypt. Many thanks for watching.